Welcome back, everyone. Greg Helbeck here with my good friend Larry Higgins. I'm really excited for this interview today. We're going to be covering a lot of stuff regarding skip tracing, which is something that's near and dear to my heart and certainly near and dear to Larry's heart. So, Larry, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, man. Thanks for having me on here.
No sweat, man. No sweat. So, listen, would you mind giving the listeners a little bit of background on yourself? Kind of who you are, where you're from, what you're doing, what did you do before real estate, stuff like that.
I am originally from the Houston area. So went to college, went to Texas A&M, Giggle. And after that, I was in construction, doing multifamily projects, apartments and student housing. Did that for a while, ended up going overseas. I was going to do it for 1 year. I went to work in Iraq actually. And I ended up spending 5 years over there doing construction management for throughout the country of Iraq. Came home, got into a job I just didn't like. I ventured out of construction for the first time. For the first time in my life, I had a job I hated. Great people, money was good, company was good. I just hated going to work. And I started just researching real estate. It wasn't intentionally, hey, I was considering jumping into real estate. It was more, I was thinking about buying rentals to just start, buying them up over time, thinking retirement would be nice to have. I had no strategy. I'm just like, yeah, rentals.
Yeah.
And then I just started hearing about investing in different things, and this owner finance model really got my attention. And each day I just hated going to work more and more. And finally I just said, I'm done. Put in my 2 week notice and decided to jump into real estate. Knew nothing about it. I hadn't even bought my own house at that point. I'd never done a single transaction. I just jumped into it and head first. First year was kind of painful, but I learned a ton. And my first two deals I owner financed. And then I was like, well, I guess I'll do some wholesaling now. Had no desire to be a wholesaler. None. I don't have any desire to be a wholesaler. I was like, maybe I'll wholesale a few deals, but did not want to be a wholesaler. Long story short, over 4 years later, I'm a wholesaler. That's primarily everything I do. And, but I enjoy it. It's fun. And, but throughout that process, I did the first 200 finance deals. They kind of fell in my lap. I had to get into marketing. And I struggled with some of the traditional marketing channel. And this is when they really weren't that bad. 4 years ago, Mel wasn't that bad. I hated it though. So I got into, what we call skip tracing and not just skip tracing, but cold calling on top of that. And that's kind of my niche and my favorite way to market for deals.
Okay, so
That was a long answer, but
yeah, no, it's good. We can unpack it. So let's kind of start back to the beginning there. So you had a job, and I think a lot of people could probably resonate to that because I probably have a lot of my audience. They're either older or they're younger, maybe my age, and they're in their job trying to find a way to quit it. So when you said you just were sick and tired of going to work every day, I mean, it sounds like that wasn't the case originally. And then what do you think maybe caused the gradual increase of you being more and more, inclined to quit that job? Do you just want to do something better with your life? Were you sick of the day-to-day kind of routine, or what was like the thing that triggered that? Because I love getting kind of the weeds on this stuff.
yeah, because it was just that. So for the first time, I was in a true office environment.
Yeah.
Even in construction, I was on the project management side, but I could go literally, like when I worked overseas, it was never boring. And, I worked out of our headquarters the last 2 years there. I was in an office quite a bit, but if I decided I need to go to a project on the other side of Iraq, I could literally schedule a flight, head over there, and it might be, if they had an airfield, I'd fly, but if not, it's like I'd book myself on what we call Mill Air, hop on a helicopter and go to some other, just stuff like that. It's like, it was not boring. And you never know, you're dealing with there was a lot of challenges there, and I enjoyed the challenge of it. As far as the logistics is huge, and sourcing materials and the labor and all kinds of crazy stuff that can happen. I mean, we're doing construction projects in a war zone basically.
Yeah.
So So then when I leave that, I just enjoy construction in general. So when I leave that and come back home, all of a sudden I'm in a straight up, like just straight up office environment all day. And, it was just the longest days of my life. Like had I stuck to construction, I'd probably still be doing it. Like, I don't like, that was the impetus, just me being so bored out of my mind. You know, the job, it was just a bad fit. I thought it'd be something that was worthwhile when I took it, even though it wasn't construction. The whole deal was this company wanted to start up a project management team, and they liked, they liked what they saw in me. And I thought it was interesting to be a part of that. I knew within 2 weeks it was probably made a mistake. But literally, I had a 1 hour commute, just 1 hour each way. And by the time once the newness wore off and I was going to the office every day, I would just dread that commute, because I was just like, son of a, like, I'm gonna have to go sit in this office for 8 hours. And it just drove me nuts. It was so quiet. I'll give you an idea. When I was in college, my criteria, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, my criteria was, I don't want to be in an office all day. That was my criteria. I had no clue what I was going to end up doing. I had a feeling it might be construction, but it could have been a lot of other things as long as I wasn't in an office. And so that was what made it so bad for me.
Okay. So you kind of just got that gut feeling. It's funny you mentioned, like, once the newness wore off, because I think a lot of people, they get excited about things, and after that 2 or 3 week window wears off, where you're kind of in your routine again, it's like you get to see if you actually like it or not. And
I was like, okay, yeah, even when as I first started getting an idea, like, hey, this is kind of boring. I'm like, well, no, just give it a chance.
Yep, exactly.
It's just like, no, this sucks. This sucks bad. So
yeah, we got to get out of here. Exactly. And real estate's the best way to do it. Awesome. Well, listen, so thanks for sharing that. So let's kind of fast forward. We got into a little bit of skip tracing. So before we get into the weeds on skipping, because as you know, I'm like, skip tracing literally has changed my life, and I could talk about it all day long. We'll keep this podcast within like 45 minutes, but man, we could have a freaking 9-hour skip trace conference, just you and me, and we wouldn't stop talking. So what does your current business model look like, and how are you using skip tracing within that model? Like, what are you doing? Like, what market are you in? And what does your, I guess your deal volume look like, and your team and stuff like that, just so we can have the listeners see what you got going on down in good old Texas.
Yeah. So I'm in Texas. I am marketing in the DFW Metroplex and Austin, San Antonio, but Houston's kind of the home market, and everything I do is skip tracing and cold calling. I'm starting to play with some other things, Facebook. I'm looking for, even though cold calling, I'm not the one on the phone. I'm looking for something that's truly passive. Like, I can just set it and forget it. I have issues with mail. Pay-per-click is pretty expensive. I think there's a lot of room, a lot of growth potential with Facebook. I think it's so cheap, quote, relatively cheap, that I'm giving that a try right now. Just started it last week. So, the jury's still out on that, but basically it comes down to skip tracing and cold calling. Okay. And as far as the team, I work with Will, my partner, with Skip Genie on some stuff. And then I also have a couple acquisition agents and a she wears multiple hats, lead manager, admin. She does quite a bit as we're growing. And then I'll kind of specialize her as just lead manager.
Sure. Okay. So you got a nice little team there. You got 2 salespeople and then sort of an admin lead manager there. So, and you guys are primarily, are you guys wholesaling houses only? Or are you buying stuff and taking it down? And so are you doing strictly assigning, or are you doing a little kind of closing and cleaning out and listing stuff like mini rehabs, anything besides that?
Not doing any rehabs. We will take properties down here and there if there's some reason we can't wholesale it, whatever that may be, we will close on it. That doesn't happen a lot, but that can be the case. I am open. I'm always looking for subject to possibilities to do the creative side, to actually hold on to it. If I can take a property over subject to, and then either owner finance it, create a wrap and owner finance it, or just hold on to it as a rental, I'm all over it.
Yeah, same.
I have one that met the criteria I was looking for. It was, what we call the unicorn. There was no equity, but it was in great shape, move-in ready, and it would have cash flowed as a rental like $400 or $500 a month from day one. Ultimately, we couldn't get the seller to go along, but it was that close.
Missed it by a hair. Love it.
I like the creative stuff, but with the two, I'm kind of building this other little operation up with the agents and the team there. Like right now, I just want I want to focus on getting better and more efficient marketing, getting deal flow consistency. So that, to me, it's just assignments. Take the money as quick as possible.
Yeah.
But at some point that will shift, and I will do more of the creative stuff. I really like the owner finance model. It's where I'll start it. So
absolutely. So if you guys aren't familiar with owner financing, I'll give you a quick example of it. Actually, I'm going to owner finance wrap. So basically what Larry's saying is, because there's probably some people who are like, what the hell is that? Basically, you take over a property. So if you're doing a subject to owner finance wrap, I know that sounds kind of complex. You're basically taking a property over and you're assuming their loan. So you're taking over the property and you're just going to start making their mortgage payments. They're going to step out of the house. You're going to give them some cash. And now you're going to basically become the owner and you're going to be paying their mortgage every month. And what you do is, once you own the property and you're making the old seller's mortgage payments, you're selling the property that you now own and you're holding a note. And then that new note that you create with the seller is wrapping around the original note that you have from the previous seller. And you're just creating a little spread in the middle there. So you're basically cash flowing a property without being a landlord, and you're getting into a deal without having to go get a bank loan or anything. So that's like high level overview on what a wrap is. There's tons of information on that if you have more questions. Mitch Stevens, a great resource on owner financing. So if you guys want to check him out, I recommend taking a look at him. So Larry, now let's get into the bulk of the show here. Something I'm really excited about. It's just the power of skip tracing, why it's so powerful, and pretty much anything you could give our listeners on, like, if they were to skip trace, let's say they're doing mail right now, they're doing PPC, and why would it make sense for them to skip trace? What are some benefits? What are some better deals you can do? And I mean, I'm obviously sold on it, but let's kind of tell the audience on why this could be a very good way to market.
First and foremost, it's one of the most cheapest. It's one of the cheaper marketing channels out there. Your cost per deal is much, and some of that's going to fluctuate depending on your strategy. Skip tracing and cold calling, that's a pretty broad term. It could be skip tracing and being extremely targeted, and it's just you calling. You're not spending hardly anything when you do that. Wow. And you're going to, with the right strategy, you're getting some very healthy deals. There's not a huge spend there. Or maybe you're doing a higher volume thing where you're going to spend $2,000 or $3,000 a month in skip tracing, doing skip tracing thousands of leads and cold calling and all that. They both work. It's just different models. So first and foremost, it's one of the cheaper marketing methods out there versus in most of the big markets. And, I talk to guys all over the country in the different markets. I know you do too. On average, cost per buy with mail, you're spending $5,000 to $7,000 to get a deal. On average, cost per buy with pay-per-click, $5,000 to $7,000 in the big markets. So I know, especially with the more targeted approach, unless you're doing something really, really, really wrong, you should be able to get, I don't know how many deals out of $5,000 worth of skip tracing and cold calling.
Absolutely.
So that's the main thing, is just the return. The ROI on that is just much greater than the marketing channels. And part of that is because, first of all, it doesn't cost that much to actually do it, but you're getting deals that you wouldn't have otherwise because you get the people on the phone, you can build rapport. People are getting so much mail these days. I call it the yellow letter lottery. Yet that's why it costs so much. The mail spend is so high because it's a I say a numbers game. That's obvious. Everything's a numbers game, but it's getting more and more like a lottery. So that's what I like about it. It's just that much cheaper and more effective. And even if, sometimes I know this, sometimes you're reaching people that no other investor has talked to.
Yeah.
They don't, there's no competition. I joke around. I'm like, I'm not the greatest negotiator in the world, but if the competition is nobody, I can generally win.
Yeah.
That's just how I look at it. So
great idea.
But even if there are other investors, typically they've contacted them through mail. A lot of times.
Yeah.
Well, if you get them on the phone, you have the opportunity to build rapport, answer questions, and deal killers and all that kind of stuff. So.
Absolutely. So basically, the main things that I'm hearing is that cheaper can be just as effective. And basically, this counterintuitively, the cold calling can separate you from the direct mail because, a lot of the times people are so used to getting that mail. If they get a phone call, right, and they're the right prospect, then that might actually just give you an advantage regardless because you're the only one who's called them. They got all these letters, and they're thinking, wow. So
I've literally had sellers tell me, hey, I've gotten a bunch of letters, but thank you for taking the time to call. It doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah,
but it's
that's
a response I've heard before.
Yeah,
So.
Oh, totally. So let's kind of get in a little bit more into the weeds on the skipping here, and I want to talk about something that I sometimes I need to hear this too because guys, if you guys haven't even followed me, my skip tracing is one of the main marketing methods that I do in 2 different markets in New York and in Texas. And let me tell you one thing, I am glad I met Larry Higgins a couple of years ago because if it wasn't for Larry, I would have not known what skip tracing was, and I would have been in a lot of trouble. So. I am an avid skip tracer. I do this full time. I have a lot of experience doing this, and I've learned a lot from Larry. That's why I wanted to bring him on the show. So this is a powerful, powerful strategy to say the least. So Larry, let's get into something that I think is really important if you want to be successful skip tracing. And I want to talk about something real quick before we get into this. Guys, you can use skip tracing. Skip tracing is just a marketing strategy. So you can skip trace to do wholesale deals. You can skip trace to do commercial deals. That's what I'm going to start doing. You can skip trace to get subject to deals. So it's basically a way to market, and it doesn't have to be just wholesaling or just rehabbing. Like you can use skip trace. It's such a versatile thing. Wouldn't you say, Larry? It's so broad.
I mean, you can be a realtor and use it. You can be a flipper. You can be a landlord, a owner finance guy, a development guy. It does not matter. If you're in this business and you're trying to buy and do something with property, whatever it is, this works.
Exactly. So let's get into now what separates, I think, the best from the rest and when it comes to being productive at skip tracing. And it's what do you do when you find a seller or you identify a property and it's very difficult to get a hold of the owner. So recently on social media, I've been making a lot of posts about, don't go after the low-hanging fruit. Everyone's trying to chase the same deals. If you want to separate yourself, go after the stuff that's challenging. And it's something that I struggle with too, because I obviously, who wouldn't want the low-hanging fruit? Who doesn't want to take the path of least resistance? But the best deals that I've done skip tracing have been freaking ones that were pains in the ass, and it was hard to find the sellers. So why is that so valuable, Larry? And what can people do if they're having a tough time trying to locate the seller when they know it's a potential opportunity to solve a problem?
Well, this kind of goes back to that question you asked earlier, why skip tracing or what are the good things about it? To me, what's huge about it, it's the most important thing of the people that should be using it and don't know enough about this approach are the newer investors. Because most newer investors typically they're on a tight budget. They can't afford to literally risk thousands of dollars and all this other stuff. So if you really want to minimize the spend, you need to be super targeted on highly distressed properties. Death, taxes, vacancy, all kinds of stuff. But when you're going after those types of leads, they tend to be harder to run some of the owners, especially if it's a dead owner. Sometimes you have a hard time finding the heirs. Sometimes you hit, it's just nothing. Like I call them ghosts. You see the owner died and they had one relative and they've died, and then it's just the trail is cold. There's nobody.
Yes.
Or maybe you find a name, but you can't get a good phone number, or there's no phone numbers and you don't know what's going on. You name the scenario. So these are the ones especially if there's a ton of distress and there's equity, those are the ones you have to dig in and just be like a dog with a bone and figure out how am I going to find these people? Do I need to go knock on a door? Do I need to call the neighbors? Do I need to, if say you figured out who their employer is, be very careful on this approach. Maybe call the employer. Are they still there? Track them down on Facebook, LinkedIn, bring in a genie, whatever it takes. That's the attitude you have to have, because if you're at that dead end, so is everybody else. And this is what's really going to separate you from all the others, is taking the time and being methodical and persistent in finding these people and getting in contact with them, whatever it is. So
Absolutely. And the harder they are to find, the more excited I get, and the better that chance of that deal is going to be, because like you said, if they're that hard to find, it's that hard for the other investors to find them too. So
when you're chasing those kinds of deals, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. When you're chasing those kinds of deals, it's not a matter of if, but how often. You're going to hear things like, I don't own that property, or the bank owns that now, or the county owns that now. You're going to find people that don't even realize they own this property.
Yeah.
So if they were expecting zero, or they thought they already missed it and the county foreclosed on, or the bank or whatever, if you offer them $1, it's infinitely more than they thought they were going to get. So it's
absolutely
from a deal standpoint, that's why these tend to be better deals. And if you're a new investor, you probably have a lot to work on as far as negotiating and things like that. These are home run type deals that you have to find these people.
Yep, absolutely. I'll give you a quick example. Well, I'll give everyone here. So this was a skip trace deal that I bought, and we're wholetailing it right now in New York. I called the seller personally. I cold called the seller. They were driving home from work, or actually it was the heirs of a deceased owner. And I was like, hey, drove by a property, wanted to see if you'd be open to selling it. They didn't even think that they owned it anymore. They had no idea. They were like, oh, I thought the bank took that. Da, 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 da. Well, they didn't take that. And we gave them $15K on top of what was owed. We bought it for $35, and it's on the market right now for $109. So it's going to be a pretty good deal, at least.
I'll tell you, now, I always have to qualify this as, this isn't typical, but I had a lady message me. She's kind of sharing a success story with me. This was a couple months ago. And she's like, yeah, the owner was dead, and I had to do this research, and, with thanks for some of your stuff, I was able to find whoever the heir was, whatever. She had actually tried to sell the property, and she couldn't. There were some issues like several years before. She thought the property was gone, the heir. Like, she didn't think anything could be done. So this investor, brand new investor, hadn't done deal one. Like, this is her very first deal. She tells her, well, it looks like you do own it, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, her very first deal, because she was persistent and didn't give up, she found the heir and all this, found the exact type of deal we're looking for, vacant, debt, all this stuff. It was a $65,000 deal. She hadn't spent
oh my God,
$200 in skip tracing.
Oh my God.
And now, again, not everybody. I didn't do that. No. My very first deal was from skip tracing and cold calling. My very first deal was $11,000. It was distressed, though. It was easy for me to negotiate. But that's an example of why it's so powerful.
That's a life-changing deal, man.
Yeah, because now you've got the money. When you're starting out, you're like, man, it's so easy to spend money in real estate, and it's like you have no consistency or just confidence. Just having confidence that you can actually do this.
Yeah.
You go rip off a $65,000 deal, that's a confidence builder,
Yeah, you're good. Yeah. That's amazing, man. That's amazing. That's a life, guys. If you're listening to that, guys and girls, that is a life-changing deal. My first skip tracing deal was like a $30,000 spread, but nonetheless, if you go out and this is not going to happen overnight, but this can happen. It's a potential opportunity. If you go out and make a $65,000 wholesale fee, or whatever strategy you're doing, trust me, that will help you out. That will change your life as long as you spend it responsibly.
He was driving for dollars and found this vacant house, and that's what it was.
That's unbelievable. That was a driving for dollars lead. It's amazing. Yeah. That's driving for wealth right there, 65K. So listen, that's awesome.
And you know what? She's a retired cop. That's more in one assignment fee. That's more than she ever made in a year as a cop. That's
crazy. Wow. We'll talk offline about what market that was. I might have to have some driving for dollars guys go drive around. Anyway. That's it. So basically, guys, sum it up here. Don't go after the low-hanging fruit. The harder they are to find, as long as the deal criteria is making sense, like, taxes, delinquency, vacant, et cetera, it's worth pursuing. Larry, so let's talk about now. I love case studies. I know you love case studies. What's the best deal you've ever done? Can be skip trace related. Just do your best ever real estate deal. Let's unpack it from start to finish. And then we'll talk about a deal that was challenging to you, and then we'll start to wind the show down after we get into some success habits. So what's the best deal you've ever done? Let's unpack it, soup to nuts. Let's spill the beans for everyone.
Okay, so the very best deal we did was
ever.
2 or 3 years ago, and this is in Houston. It was a house. It had a high tax delinquency. It was like $30,000 or something. And initially, I thought it was vacant. So when I skip trace the owner, the very first thing I see is the owner's dead. I'm like, okay, that's distress. And she only has one relative listed. And when I run his report, it's her son. He's dead. Whoa. And then there's just nobody. There's just nothing. And I'm researching the son, and I can't find any siblings, any children. I saw he was married and divorced years before. I'm just researching I'm getting outside of skip trace databases. I'm researching the county records. And I found out that at one point I was looking to see if anybody tried to do a probate on him. And I didn't find a probate, but I saw where they tried to establish a guardianship, or they were trying to figure out if the county needed to establish a guardianship for him. This was probably 3 or 4 years before he died. So as I'm reading through all this paperwork, basically the county sent this doctor out to interview him, and I'm seeing the doctor's report. And it's like, yeah, physically he's having issues. Mentally, he's still cognizant. He's all this, and he's fine mentally. And it starts stating some actual facts. He lives off of Social Security. He doesn't have a job. He has no income other than Social Security, and he rents his garage apartment out for like $200 a month. And I'd asked Will, my partner, to go by there and talk to the neighbors. We thought the house was vacant. The neighbors like, oh, well, somebody lives there. You couldn't tell. I mean, it looked vacant. And he said there's a guy in the house and there's a guy in the garage apartment. And it dawned on me, I bet the guy in the garage apartment, I said, once the owner died, I was like, I bet he just stayed, because nobody was showing up to kick him out. I'm like, I bet he just stayed there. And that was my hunch. But I just started doing some real deep dives. In that guardianship paperwork, it clarified, it verified everything I thought. No kids, no siblings. His mom died. He had no relatives. Well, everybody has them. It's just a matter of how distant. So I ended up finding an old obituary from the late 70s when I was just trying to dig in. And I got some new names tied to the family. I'll never forget. I just start calling these people. And one lady, I thought she was in Arkansas. It was early in the morning. I called. She didn't answer. I called at 8 our time and Central Time, 8 or 9. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail. She called me back a few minutes later. She's like, da-da-da. She's like, I'm actually in Alaska. It's 6:30 in the morning here. I'm like, oh, crap. She was cool. And she was the connection I needed. She was a wealth of information. She was a paralegal. She helped do affidavits of heirship.
Oh, wow. You hit the lottery.
Oh, she helped. She was great, because there was 7 heirs on his mom's side of the family. But this was a complicated heirship issue. In Texas, you just have to use heirship laws to determine who inherits what interest. So we had the mom's side taken care of. His mom's side, his dad's side, were a dead end. And that was the very first time we brought in a genealogist. And we were like, hey, here's the guy, here's the owner, here's his parents. We need to know who's his closest relatives on his dad's side of the family. And we got lucky, because his dad would be 120 years old if he was still alive. Oh my God. So I'm just like, man, that family tree is going to branch into 20 heirs or something. It came down to one person, and she was very sophisticated, and she viewed this whole deal as a potential liability for her. She couldn't sign the paperwork fast enough. She wouldn't let us pay her anything. She was like, bring me the paperwork, bring it to me. I want it out of my name. So we did all this. Long story short, we contracted it for $50,000. Yeah, when I talked to the lady in Alaska, I'm actually literally informing her cousin died, cousin Alfie. As soon as I said his name, all I knew was his legal name. She's like, oh, cousin Alfie, I hadn't seen him 20 years. I'm like, sorry to tell you this, but he died. By the way, you inherited, it looks like you inherited some of the interest in the property. By the way, you owe $30-something thousand in taxes. And by then we found out he had squatters in the house. It wasn't vacant. They were basically squatters in the house. So I'm just ticking this stuff off. I'm like, would y'all like to sell? Yeah. So
Yeah, sure. I'd love to see it.
so yeah, so we contracted it for like 50, and I can't remember if we double closed or if we straight up wholesaled it, but we sold it for 200. It was a $150,000 deal.
Oh my goodness.
So it wasn't like it was $1 million deal. It was, and then we got 150,000. Like 150,000 deals impressive regardless of the price point. But literally, it's a $200,000 house, and we created a $150,000 deal out of that. We did that for everything we just talked about: high distress and being persistent. I guess how many investors they talked to when I got in touch with all these relatives. Yeah, big fat zero.
Ditto.
I'll never forget. On the one side, I was like, "Hey, if we can get y'all a couple thousand a piece, would that work?" With a lady in Alaska, however many there were, it was like 4, 6, 7. Anyway, like if we get y'all a couple thousand a piece, and she's like, "Well, let me talk to the family," and they came back, and she's like, "Well, can you do 3,000?" I'm just like, I'm talking to my partner. Yeah, I'm sitting here
I gotta get financing's approval.
Yeah, and so it all worked out well. But that was it, and that I love that case study not only because it was our best deal, but everything that it entailed. It meets being targeted, being persistent, and all that distress. So
I love it, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. I actually wrote down the word persistence twice on my daily notes after you told that story, because the harder they are to find, the better. Persistence, and persistence. Here's my one contingency for that. You persist when you think statistically it's probably a deal that's going to work in your favor. Like if it's a taxed, vacant, distressed, if it's like a deal like that, because this is something that I do with skip tracing. I make a judgment call. I'm like, hey, person's hard to find. I don't see a lot of distress points. They've been paying the taxes. I don't think it's vacant. Is it worth trying to find this person? Like, you know what I mean? So it's almost like having that yin and yang.
Every time you're about to invest more time or energy into that lead, you're constantly evaluating, is it still worth it?
Yeah.
You're gauging the probability of a deal and the probability of a worthwhile deal for the amount of time and effort, or in some cases money, that you're putting into that. And with skip tracing, you basically put it up when you skip trace. That's your money. But as you go down that path, hey, is it worth spending a couple $100 on a genealogist? You're always evaluating, just like you said.
Yeah, is it worth it? Exactly. Awesome. So we'll actually pass the worst ever deal. I think I want to start, pivot into the back half of the show, the last section here before we get into your contact information and some stuff you got going on. So Larry, real estate to the side, what are some of your success habits? You're a very successful investor. You've had success, in a short time frame. You haven't been in real estate for too long, about 5 or 6 years now. So what are some success habits that you do on a daily basis that just help you get stuff done and make you a productive real estate investor consistently every month?
And this isn't the right answer for everybody. Everybody's biologically different, but I'm an early morning person. I like getting up early mentally. I like to work out early in the morning and, get my day started before the day starts. Everybody else, phone calls, emails, the day-to-day stuff that comes up right before this Zoom call. Get an email from the title company. I'm like, crap, I need to respond to that. Your day gets away from you. You lose control. Now, my goal is to ultimately have the processes and systems where I'm not so on the hook and have to. I don't have to respond, be so responsive. I have people that can take care of certain things, but that's the main thing for me, is to get my day started early. And mentally, I feel a lot better when I'm working out. Across the board, I feel better. So that's one thing. And then just pay attention. I guess there's not a real concise way to say it, but I'm always paying attention to what everybody else is doing. It's it's just a broad, Facebook. It can be a time suck, but I'm just looking to see what's going on, paying attention.
Yeah.
What are people saying? Over time, you'll notice trends. Whether it's marketing or you might catch some little nugget, we're part of one of the same masterminds, and I go in there. I look for I love little nuggets, but I like to see overall trends. What are the common issues everybody's struggling with, and just trying to stay a step ahead. Not because I'm so smart, but I got into cold calling before a lot of other people did, because I just saw a trend, and I experienced mail. I didn't, like I said, 4 years ago, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
But I could just see, I'm like, wait a second. because I'm paying attention, I see everybody going to these seminars. I see everybody saying mail, mail, mail. Well, more and more people are jumping into the same thing, and everybody's being told spend more mail. I need to find something different. So
Love it. Go against the grain.
Pay attention. And one more thing, if you're having, we're talking about skip tracing. I heard Mitch Stephen, you mentioned him earlier, owner finance guy.
Okay.
I heard him on a weekly call one time telling, the way he said it was like, hey, if you're getting pulled in a certain direction, that's where the results or the interest is taking you. Don't fight it. If you're getting pulled that direction, I didn't intend on going cold calling, but I was seeing results. One thing led to another. I was kind of getting pulled, and then just the way it was working, I was kind of getting pulled in that direction. So whatever you're doing, if you're getting the results or the interest is there, something like you just like something more than other, it doesn't have to be planned, but just don't fight it. Go with it and kind of explore it. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for those tips.
That wasn't real concrete, but there you go.
Very helpful. Stay ahead of the trend. Get up early. I love getting up early too when I'm disciplined enough to do it. You just feel like you can, I read in the great book, one of my favorite books called The One Thing by Gary Keller. He talks about, the morning is like the rudder of your day. So if you can get up and you can have a solid morning, it's like setting up those dominoes to have a more effective day because you already took control of your morning. So it's a lot easier to take control the rest of the day. So great stuff, Larry. So let's kind of get into one more thing, something that has helped me a lot, and it's skipgenie.com. Would you mind just telling everyone kind of what Skip Genie is, what are some of the things that they offer, and then if they were ever interested or they had questions for you, the best way to contact you, and we can wrap up the show.
Yeah, so Skip Genie, that's why we're on this podcast today together. You found us, you were using Skip Genie. We are a skip trace provider. We provide skip trace data, whether you need to run a bulk list of 10,000 people, or you're taking this really targeted approach, and we have a dashboard that you can log into, do some manual searches different ways. And we have a weekly coaching call. And I think you can vouch for the weekly coaching call. I'm there. That's me every Wednesday night. I'm there to help you. However, whether it's you're at a dead end, on a deal trying to find somebody, or hey, how do I hire a cold caller? What's a good auto dialer? How do I find a bot? Whatever it is, I'm on the call. If I can answer, I will. If nothing else, I'll point you to somebody or a service that can help you. And we also do a lot for those of you that do mail. We process return mail, so you can literally mail us your return mail. We'll do all the data entry into the spreadsheet. We'll run a bulk skip trace on it and email you the results. So, that's it in a nutshell. We're a skip trace provider with basically kind of a weekly coaching call that's included. And, it's like I say, having data is half the battle, but knowing what to do with it is the other half. How to optimize the use of that. So
I couldn't agree more, man. So awesome. So guys, if you're interested in skip tracing, Larry is the guy to talk to. Him and his company, they're fantastic. I've been a Skip Genie customer for years now, and I'll tell you one thing. Skip tracing has changed my life, and it's the whole reason I'm actually here in California, because I had a bunch of really good deals happening.
Yeah.
Business model turnout. And Larry, but I want to kind of do a quick disclaimer before we get into your contact info. When I first, because I've known you for a while now, we've been cool for a while. This didn't happen to me overnight. Like I didn't just wake up and start having success with skip tracing. How long, tell everyone from your side, because I think they'll believe you more than they believe me. How long did it take me to really try to get my footing with skip tracing? Because I know we were working together for a while, and it was not easy.
I want to say it was at least 3 or 4 months, maybe a little longer.
Yeah, it was a while.
I remember it wasn't. Your first few deals that you were finding people. You were finding people that wanted to sell. It was just there was things you had a little bit of a unique challenge being in New York, and the time that it takes for some of that to close and all that. And then there was a lot of you just had a bad run of luck.
Yeah.
I also remember one of those people, it ended up being, I forgot which deal it was. You had it, you were in negotiation. It didn't work out early on, but then like a year later, that one guy, you were just doing a follow-up or something, and you end up getting it was off that initial lead. You're doing a follow-up, and you end up, I don't know, 40 or 50,000 or whatever it was. So yeah, it took a while. But I remember I was like, I felt confident if you stuck with it, you'd work it out.
Yeah.
But you were finding the people, and I think to say you figure it out is an understatement now, but some people, they put, like I said, that one lady, very first deal, stumbles into six. Had people skip trace their return mail. Two people, literally, very first return mail that they skip trace. One guy pops off a $40,000 deal. Another girl, she was in Florida. I think it was like 30 or 35,000.
Goodness.
Again, not everybody comes that hard out the gate like that, but and those are one-off scenarios. But to do it, to consistently find deals, get these deals, it may take a little while. We have another guy. Y'all remind me a lot of each other. The guy Ronnie in Nashville, very similar to you. Similar experience level coming into it. He had done a deal or two, or you may have done more than that before this. He'd done one or two deals, I think, but he was struggling with mail, and in a matter of 6 months, he was taking a very targeted approach. And I think it's within 5 or 6 months, he'd gone from struggling to get deals and consistently get deals and all that stuff to he was able to quit his job and jump into real estate full time. It took him a little while, but then he's just knocking off these deals. And he's just not spending any money. It's just him and his wife. And now they're working on the growing, scaling, getting a caller to help and things like that. But that's the kind of stuff I love. If you can, offer Greg $20,000 to teach you all the secrets, and that might save you some time. But
oh, no. There's none of that here. This is pure value.
No, you don't want to be a high dollar coach on standby.
No, I don't. I'll be fully transparent with my audience here. I'm looking to raise private capital. So
yeah, I say that jokingly because I know you don't. That's not what you want to do.
Yeah, I know. Larry's just kidding. But seriously, all jokes aside, I'm making an offer. If you're interested in potentially working with my company, from a partnership perspective, feel free to reach out to me, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com. I'm going to make the good old offer right there. Anyhow, with that being said, Larry, what are some best ways to get in touch with you if people wanted to know more about skip tracing, what you got going on? This was a super fun interview, and I'm sure people want more.
Yeah, you can email me, Larry@skipgenie.com, LARY@skipgenie.com. You can check out our website, skipgenie.com. I am on Facebook. I'm kind of sporadic, but you can try and message me there. If you see me active that day, there's a good chance I'll catch you if you shoot me a message on Facebook. But email is probably the best way.
Awesome. Well, Larry, thanks so much for being a guest on my show. You provided a ton of value. I'm so happy we got to do this. It's been a long time coming.
It's fun, man.
Thanks for adding some value, man.
No problem. It was good to be here.
See you, Larry.